Hello, welcome back to the Thriving Inside the Thin Blue Line podcast. My name is Monica Crawford, back here in 2026, getting ready to reboot this thing. Today we have Erin Davis on, and I will go ahead and turn it over to her and let you give a quick intro.
Well, happy new year to you and all the energy related to thinking about what's possible this year. I'm Erin Davis, and I do work in the space of workplace inclusion and really ensuring that we create spaces where folks feel a sense of belonging. And I think there's so many places that we can take our conversation today, but one that sort of like excites me a lot and one that I was really chatting with folks about over the holidays was just, this intersection of saying, what does representation look like in sports and how can we continue to move forward with some pretty amazing momentum that, I've been witnessing in my world with female participation. And from a personal perspective, and this just sort of came up in conversation this morning, is I am very new to hockey and started to learn to play in the last 6 months. And it has been amazing and opened up all of these doors and pathways. And part of my reason for doing so is I have two kids in hockey, so I sort of wanted to learn alongside them. But there's just so much momentum and so much positive outcomes from participation in sports. And I know that that's like so near and dear to you, and you obviously know all the benefits of this. But I actually wonder if we can like change the world a little bit if we kind of spend a bit more time talking about the importance of sport in people's lives. And I'm definitely on that journey, learning about how important it is in mine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool to pick up with hockey. It's funny. I went to school at Bowling Green State University, which is in Ohio, and growing up in Missouri, like the only hockey that was
Mm.
around was the St. Louis Blues, and I was in Kansas City, so that's like 5 hours away from the closest hockey team. Next closest might have been like Chicago, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I didn't grow up around hockey, but I remember my dad would always watch the St. Louis Blues games on TV, and I like as a kid, and I thought it was just like the most boring thing ever. Because we actually lived outside of St. Louis for a short bit too. But yeah, hockey was very much a college sport in the North in Ohio where I was at,
Hmm.
and it became like my favorite sport to go watch. And I don't know if like of course, I've only experienced it from like my school, but we had like a smaller arena, so everybody was jam-packed in there, and it was always
Hmm.
full, and it was always loud, and it was just a good time. And being Bowling Green, I mean, we were Division One, but like obviously we're not like an Ohio State or like a more like well-known school. But in hockey, they played those teams. Like they played Ohio State, they played Michigan, like they played them and they beat them. And it was so fun to watch. They actually just beat Ohio State this past weekend again. So
Nice.
it's cool to see them compete and like against bigger schools and win in that sport because they could.
Yeah. Well, it's the determination, right? And it's the drive, and there's so many factors, right? I think about just the importance of team, right? Like how much you learn from just being part of something greater than yourself, even in the work that I do, right? Like you think about workplace cultures and you think about there's no way to thrive it's as an individual on your own. Like you need help from others, you need to work with others, you need to be able to think about what are those outcomes. In sport it's pretty easy, right? You're going for the win, but in the workplace it becomes important too that people are focused on positive outcomes, and they're focused on how do we make this sum of all of our parts better by working together. So that's cool that you had the switch with hockey. I would say like I knew about hockey. I live in Canada, and our home team is the Edmonton Oilers, so that sometimes puts us on the map because they've had a pretty good streak of making it to the Stanley Cup playoffs the last 2 years, and certainly Wayne Gretzky, which folks probably know his name, played for the Oilers when we did win the Stanley Cup. It's a hockey city, but I never played, so I didn't have this connection to it. So when you're watching it, you're like, what is this? What is this thing? But then you learn, and if you're part of that community, you start to like really appreciate how amazing it truly is. And yeah, I can imagine you being in that stadium. Same thing here when you have thousands of people coming together and cheering on a team, you can't help but be a part of the excitement, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I went to the only pro um game I went to was the Detroit Red Wings because I was about an hour from Detroit. So I did get to experience like one pro game versus one college game, but the college atmosphere was so much better.
Yeah, I hear that. I've got to like make it out to some college games. I mean, I like would love to see March Madness. That would be amazing. Um, but yeah, we got to get you out to like a PWHL game too, because the Professional Women's Hockey League is creating some pretty big momentum, and they've got 8 teams now, and I think the discussion is they'll probably expand to 12. There's some like they were just playing a takeover game, I think on the weekend in Detroit, actually. So, probably see some more folks in the Midwest, but you've got the Minnesota Frost close by.
Yeah. So you mentioned thriving in the workplace, and that's
Yeah.
one of the core themes of mine is finding like defining what it means to thrive in your life and career. So what does that mean for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, I could probably give you the surface level answer, which maybe I'll start with, but it's like it is trying to think about, how are we leading in a way inside of an organization that we're getting the most out of our own skills and our own expertise and being able to contribute in a meaningful way. I think there's so much research that has been done to really talk about, how do you get the most out of your staff, your employees? It really is creating an environment in which they can show up and like bring their skills to the forefront so they can do their best work. And to me, that's thriving. It's that you want to wake up in the morning and you want to go to work because you believe that you're contributing to something bigger than yourself. And you actually start to see the impacts of your work as well. And I give the caveat that I think that that's relevant for like any type of work. Certainly, I focus in the area of big corporate for the most part, but I do work in the not for profit. I think everyone can find meaning in the work that they do and get to that place of actually thriving. And so I think you get to a place where you find purpose. You find purpose in what you're working on and what you're working towards, rather than just being, you know, a cog in the wheel, someone who does ABC and like that's all you focus on. Like there's something greater to us being humans, and it's important to us to unlock that in a world of AI where, some work can be done and automated. That's great. But we still have this like human component that will always make us better, I believe, than just allocating all the work to AI. So to thrive really is tapping into your potential and tapping into finding that purpose for an individual for me.
Yeah, I love that. My brain's already going, picking up on picking and pulling different things from that response. But yeah, I love how you're saying that, like how you lead inside of an organization. So, like for instance, say somebody is brand new. Like what would be maybe you can talk through your story a little bit or something or advice you might give somebody else of like maybe they're brand new and they want to find that purpose or they want to be a leader eventually. But you can remember how you are like day one of a new job or day one of a new environment. You're kind
Hmm.
of like taking it all in. Like you're not going to step up and be necessarily be a leader day one. Of course, you can in your own way, but not in like the profound way I think that you're speaking to. So
Hmm.
share a little bit of your experience or maybe just any like advice you would give somebody who agrees with everything you just said and was like, yes, I want to do that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's a good point. Like I want to emphasize that you said, like I think everyone has the possibility to lead. I always sort of give the example of everyone is a lower L leader. Like you can, no matter what your job is or where your sphere of influence is, you can make a difference. But sometimes we are allocated the big L and are in a leadership role and have the ability to, create maybe a wider breadth of change. But when I think about this, for a new employee, yeah, for sure, it's honing in on your excitement. Like you said yes to this opportunity for a reason. So how can we tap into that? Like what drew you into the position? There's got to be something there that allowed you to say, yes, I want to bring my skills, I want to bring my gifts into this workplace, and then starting to navigate how you can do that. I've existed inside of corporate organizations for a long time that I know there are some really important factors of who do get to know. You can start to observe who are the folks that people listen to, who are the folks in the organization that people follow, who are the natural leaders. You can start to observe that. And I think when you're new in an organization, you probably do spend a little bit more time in observation mode because you've got to sort of figure out what are the unwritten rules around here. Like if I want to continue to be successful, like what are the things that I'm going to have to show I'm capable of, and who are the people that I want to get to know. I think those are key components, but I think the other piece too, and this is my language in my world of creating inclusive workplaces, you know, we want I believe and I want people to exist to be able to speak their truth. And I think there's a lot of privilege in saying that because sometimes we aren't given the opportunity to do that. So we've got to sort of assess the circumstances that we have the psychological safety to do so. But if we do have that psychological safety, if we don't have fear of saying the wrong thing or being called out for like a different opinion, we can start to share our ideas. I think in a collaborative way of saying like, have we ever thought about doing it this way? And sharing that with someone who will be willing to hear your idea, be willing to hear that different perspective. And that's the value that I see when I talk about like diversity in the workplace. It's that we have the accumulation of different ideas. And we know through research when we have those different ideas and we can bring them to the table and have a robust conversation around them, that's where creativity and innovation comes from. If we have the same people doing the same thing with the same ideas, we don't invent new things. We just keep doing things the way that we've always done them, right? I think that's the reassurance I would give to folks is like, if you really want to make a difference, it is like bringing those, big ideas forward in the setting that you feel comfortable in to say, yeah, I've noticed this. I see us doing things in a different way. Like, can we try it? And I think that's how you can start to feel that sense of belonging. Hopefully, those ideas are received in a positive way so that your contributions then become part of those, the overall long-term success of an organization. Because, like, we know there's lots of examples of organizations. I mean, the example that comes to mind that everyone knows it's sort of old, but it's like the blockbuster effect, right? It's like if you aren't iterating, if you aren't thinking of new ideas of doing things, then you're obsolete.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw a reel this week that was like the evolution of Netflix. That's what makes me
Yeah,
think of how they
I
went from
know.
the mail order DVDs to now where they are now. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that was Netflix was the death of Blockbuster, unfortunately.
hmm Yeah. Yeah. And now we just have 16. Well, this is maybe a Canadian context comment, but we have so many different streaming services. It's like we have cable again. It's wild. Like we've come full circle. So, like to any listener who works in that space, like there's some opportunity to interrupt that
Yeah.
the way in which we take in content in the future.
Yeah. So you said as far as diversity and inclusion in the workplace, being able to foster an environment where you can speak your truth.
hmm
Absolutely 100%. I mean, I part of my story is coming out of a toxic work environment where nobody could speak their truth, and targeting and retaliation was a thing if you did. So if somebody, do you like off the top of your head, would you be able to give like red flags or green flags on like this is a positive work environment versus not? Is if like if somebody's looking for a place where they can speak their truth and have that psychological safety.
Yeah, well, I think like even within your example that you just shared is, if you are saying something that's new, that you believe to be innovative, and it's met with pushback, we've tried that, it didn't work. You get the impression that your idea is not being heard, that's a huge red flag. And so that's kind of why I give the context of like we have to have that psychological safety to be able to bring that idea forward. And so, organizations can get quite large. And so there's going to be pockets. There's going to be pockets of positive culture because there's a leader there that cares about it and they pay attention. And there's going to be pockets where it isn't. And I'm sure you could probably say that's true for the environments that you were in. There was people doing good work. It was just you were in an environment where the toxicity outweighed the people doing the good work. And so my advice is, one from a process perspective is understanding that like there are places that you can go and have a conversation with human resources. You can go and have like there's, whistleblower lines and things like that. That to me is sort of the last result. I understand why those processes are in place, but who are the folks that are willing to listen to you, and they may not be on your team. And so this is where we can start to be creative to figure out who our allies are inside the organization. Who are those who are going to support us, who are going to be willing to listen? They may be people who've been with the organization for a little bit longer than you, so they sort of like know how to navigate those unwritten rules. They know how to navigate, go and talk to this person, they're really going to have your back, they're going to be able to like help you. And even within that role of ally, sometimes we just need someone who's like that good person who can listen, right? Like sometimes that can be what we need. Because if we get stuck in negativity, and Monica, you and I are both entrepreneurs, and so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like that, negative like playbook is in my head maybe more often than I want to admit to, right? And we can like get pulled in that direction. But you and I get opportunities to like get on these calls and like hear from other people, and I just like can't help but leave those conversations like feeling like, yeah, okay, this is possible, this is the new idea that I'm going to take and I'm going to run with. But if I was doing that by myself, there's no way I'd get there as quick. There's no way I'd even, necessarily come up with those like different ways of doing things. And so it's looking for people in positions of power to help to support you, but also looking for people who are your peers who can just be that shoulder to lean on when you need it the most, right? And success comes, well, I'm thinking maybe people will dispel this, but I think, having some level of a plan, right? Like putting together, this is what I'm going to focus on the next 3 months. I hear a lot of people are like who want a promotion or who want to continue advance in organization, and through their eyes, they've proven themselves. But in the eyes of the decision maker or the decision makers, they haven't, right? So there's a gap there that has to be filled. And so, you get as much data as you can to help fill that gap, and you get that through conversations and talking to folks. So I think red flags are really, and I lean a lot into like how do you feel? So if you don't feel good in that conversation that you've had with someone, or you leave sort of like questioning, like that's a red flag. But if someone's there and willing to support you, I think those are the people you want to lean into and spend more of your time with.
Yes, 100%. And unfortunately, I mean, on the negative side of things, you talk about psychological safety, and it's not something that I don't think people actually call out very often because we're not really taught to unless you were brought up in an
Hmm.
environment that taught you about those things. But I can speak from like my my former job like literally gave me anxiety. Like
Hmm.
that's the biggest red flag of like I am not
Huge.
psychologically safe. And I've talked to other women too that often dismiss it. Like it's the I am anxious before I go into work. Like it's Sunday night, like I'm already pissed. Like we flipped a switch, we know tomorrow's work day, like gotta go back to the same place that we've been going to that's making us feel this way. But somehow there's a disconnect. Like you don't like your brain doesn't conceptualize what's actually happening, I feel like, until it's like after the fact.
Well, and it also has to do with your own level and ability to tune into your body and understand, even as you share like your own level of anxiety, because you could have said that was something else, right? Like you could have attributed it to something else going on in your life versus like it's actually work that's making me do that. And this is where the privilege of the circumstance comes in too, because some people don't have the privilege to be like, well, I'm going to go look for a different job, or I'm going to go try to find, another place that's going to actually provide me with that psychological safety. So that's where I think that network, I've had people use the term like our own personal board of directors. Who are those people that can help you work through that? I do believe there's something on the other side for us to work through and get to that better place. We're lucky. I think we have a lot of choices. We're not like there's not sort of like three jobs we can choose from and like you're like in that lane forever. So there's opportunities to say like no, like I deserve better and I want to be in an environment where I'm respected, where my voice is heard, where I can contribute. Because otherwise like that's not finding meaning, that's not finding purpose. Like we all have so many gifts that we can offer and finding the right environment in which we can do that. And it might be small steps to get there. And I talk a lot about how, our own contributions can go beyond the workplace as well. Like where are we volunteering? Where are we putting, we may have some extra time or capacity to give back to our communities. That's another way in which we can grow our skills and help to align to our purpose as well.
Yes. A lot of what I do coming from the law enforcement space is encouraging those who either in law enforcement first responder fields or any just somebody who gets into a career where they like it it becomes their identity type of thing where it's like eat, sleep, work, repeat.
Hmm.
Like I am this thing, like this is my life, this is my meaning, my purpose, all those things is trying to encourage them to take a step back, be like, do you have a hobby? Is there something else that we can do outside of work that helps you de-stress from work and then also like brings all the health benefits of like all the coping skills and all of those positive things that go with it too?
Yeah, totally. Totally. Well, you bring up such a good point, and I went like I'm thinking this is like maybe at the core of some of the work that you do is yeah, like who are we outside of work? Right? And how do we actually find that alignment to showing up for ourselves? In as an entrepreneur, like I have to think about that often. I don't think I'm always great at it. I shared with you, like, I got on the treadmill before we started recording because I was like, okay, I got like 30 minutes right now. I'm going to do it, right? Because if I don't do it now, then I'm going to get pulled into something else and then it's going to be the end of the day. And so I've got to build those routines and habits in for myself as well.
Yes. Yes. From an organizational level, with your work with inclusion and also diversity, what are the main things that you bring in to the table to help make those things a reality?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece with any organization is understanding what have they been working on already to actually understand what their workplace culture is like. And so this can often be through engagement surveys that the organization has done or like pulse checks with employees. Sometimes, there's actual conversations that folks have had with employees and staff and like getting that data. And within that data, more often than not, there's a bit of a gap. There's a bit of a gap that says like employees don't necessarily feel comfortable, showing up as their whole self at work, that they feel that their voice isn't able to contribute. At deeper levels, there are concerns with like what are the systems look like? How do I get promoted inside of an organization? What does success look like? How do I start to like continue to achieve what I want to achieve inside of the organization? So we pull all that data together to say, here's some gaps. How can we then prioritize within those gaps what makes sense for an organization to focus on? You know, the list can sometimes be, more than three things. And so we've got to really focus on what does the organization have capacity for. So my background before doing this work was in strategic planning. And so I know that organizations only have so much capacity. Like there's however many employees and they can do X amount of work. And so that's what the output is. And so we have to be realistic and start to think about what are we focusing on? What do we want to achieve next year? And how can we bring in this lens of inclusion? So if you have like a really heavy lift plan for the next year, like an organization's going to do like a major acquisition of another firm in the year ahead, well, that's going to take a lot of energy, a lot of capacity. But if employees are like not operating at a high level of efficiency, like they're not feeling like they can do their best work because of the environment that they're in, well, it's going to take you a lot longer to move through that acquisition process. And you're going to burn a lot of people out. You may lose some people in that process. And you don't want to, I don't think, lose your high performers inside of an organization because you're pushing on them too hard. So it's like unpacking that for them and then putting a plan in place. Over the last few years, I spent a lot of time also sort of like in the proverbial classroom around education and building common knowledge as well. I think is important for organizations to know in a time where, DEI has become a bit of a polarizing term, that we actually understand like what is diversity. Diversity exists with two people in a room. We have different backgrounds. You and I, we yes, we share commonalities. We're both women, but we grew up in different cities. We went to different colleges. We have different career paths. Us coming together brings a wealth of experience and expertise as compared to someone who has a very similar background to myself coming in a room and trying to work together. So, understanding that's what we mean when we talk about that. Inclusion is that how are we working together? Right? We can put a bunch of people in a room and say, yes, we have diversity. But if there's one voice that's louder than the rest of them, and that's the only opinion that we focus on, well, then we're just going to be doing the things that we've always been doing and not moving in a direction of being more strategic, more innovative, more creative. And then equity really comes down to the systems. And so we know that systems have been created maybe with a certain type of person in mind, a certain type of skill set. So, let's talk about parents in the workplace, right? It can become really difficult to be a working parent for a number of reasons, caregiving, contributions, even for folks who have aging parents. And so does the system of being in an office Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, like work for everybody? Or is that a system that we actually want to think a little bit differently about? And so that would be another example of something that we would like work through and come to an output that does take in perspectives of different folks to get to a better solution. So really, it can look different for different organizations, but really how can you ensure that you're having like high functionality inside your workplace? Because when you do, then that's when you're getting like the best value out of the work that you're doing and the people
Yeah.
that you're working with.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about equity in systems, like to me, I've always just said like treat people like people. Like when it's
Mm-hmm.
something common enough to do where it's like, hey, so and so can't be here at 8 because they have to drop their kid off at school at 7:45. Like they'll be here shortly after. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like why don't we let them shift their work day? Well, then it
Yeah.
becomes, well, Betty got to do this. Why don't I get that? And then I'm like, can we just have some compassion and create like allow people to shift their work hours if they need to? Can we trust people that they're going to do their job and then fire them if they don't instead of micromanaging the shit out of people when they don't need to be? Like I could get on a massive soapbox about this, but
Yeah. No, but you're
it goes
so
back to
right.
like treat people like people. I mean, you're talking systems like gosh, and in male dominated fields, it's like women getting a voice of like what they need for like pregnancy leave and like childcare
Hmm.
and all of those things. And I mean, some things it's just like it's never been brought to the table. So like the other people don't really know that there's like a problem or there's like something that needs to be fixed. But in some cases, it is brought to the table and then it's met with resistance. And it's like, what we're asking for is simple. Why is this such a problem?
Hmm.
Type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and in circumstances like that, there's no easy button, but I think a lot of times I try to advise folks of like, what's the language of the decision makers and how can we help them understand the change that we want to see? And so, from a Canadian context, we've had some shifts around parental leave and maternity leave over the last, 60 years. But like when my mom was pregnant with me in the 80s, like she got fired from her job because she was pregnant. Like, so policies have changed over time, right? Like we have done the work to understand like these shifts need to happen. We won't get into like all the political conversations associated with this. But certainly, that's maybe for a future conversation. But yeah, what about workers' rights? My family, we were in a small town this weekend for a hockey tournament, and we were in one of the local restaurants, and they had like all these pictures of the railway when it was built over 100 years ago. That's why this little small town exists. I started like computing and thinking about it in my head, like how much did that railway cost to make? Not much because we didn't pay people to do it. And, there's a lot of awful stories associated with within the rail systems. But my point being, we have workers' rights now. Are they fully where they need to be? No, but we keep iterating and keep trying to make those systems better because it's not manageable for someone to work minimum wage. Like, I don't know, like I think that's probably like based on the state. It's based on the province here, but 750, I don't know, isn't that true in some states? It's like $7 an hour for minimum wage. Like, there's no way people can like live off of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've definitely come a long way. There's still more work to be done.
Still more work to do.
So you're talking about sports, and I think inclusion in general. I mean, where do you see the solutions in bringing more women to the table and them having a voice and being heard? Because I think in today's day and age, I think more women are getting a seat at the table, so to speak, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're being heard yet.
Yeah. Well, if we're talking about like women in sport, like we got to invest, like period, right? Like the dollars are flowing into um all of these, the NFL, the NHL, all of the advertising dollars have historically gone into men's sports, right? So that's where we actually need to see the shift, and it is starting to happen. There's conversations about that, and there's also evidence that we're able to fill arenas, that we're able to, get people out to watch this. So, I want to be able to turn on my TV and be able to watch a PWHL game, right? I want to be able to see as much airtime for women's sports as men's sports. I want us to be able to start to have the right language too around, having these conversations. I remember talking to a parent at one of my kids' soccer games, and they're like, yeah, people don't watch women's sports. Stop. No, actually, they do. Like, there is huge amount of people who are watching it now. Maybe, yeah, sure. Maybe that was true, like, 10 years ago. They didn't get as much airtime on the sports networks, but they are now. So, like, we've got to change that storyline. We've got to change that rhetoric. And then it's like, this is a hardline opinion. It's like you don't get to say anything unless you've experienced it and you've been like in the arena. And
Mhm.
so I just hope that we can get more people out, like go and experience it because it's so much fun, right?
Yeah.
And bar none, okay, talking in a binary, our world is 50% female, 50% male, right? And so we're going to miss half the population in this. You're telling me that if you have a daughter, there is an excitement for her sitting in that arena to see like if I love this sport so much, I can go and like participate in it. I could potentially have that as part of my career. I can go and watch it. Like it holds so much meaning. And so that's where some of the energy needs to go to. So I want people to invest in it. And it doesn't mean like everyone needs to put up $1 million. I don't have $1 million to do it, but I'm going to buy the tickets. I'm going to show up and I'm going to be like there. And if I'm not buying the ticket, I'm going to put it on the TV. And this is huge. Like get to know the players' names. And I'm working on it. Like it's hard, right? Because like a lot of the time media is really focused and fixated on either the top names or like I guess we're starting to see that a little bit more in women's sports, right? Like who's your favorite like female athlete? Well, everyone will, Serena Williams, right? Like that will predominantly come up, but try to learn the names of the athletes across the boards, and we can start talking about how amazing their game is. There's a maneuver in hockey called the Michigan, and like I apologize to everyone who like knows this better than I do, but you basically are behind the net and you like scoop the puck up and like hook it into the net. Like it's like in my mind an impossibility. But the first time it was ever done was in Michigan, and it was Abby Rock who did that. She plays
Okay.
for the New York Sirens, and so it's like, yes, Abby, like amazing. Tell those stories too.
Yeah. This is one of those things I can be proud of being from Kansas City that they built the first women's soccer stadium that's just for women's soccer. So it's like the first
Yeah,
professional sports
amazing.
stadium for a women's sport. And of course, Patrick and Brittany Mahomes with the Kansas City Chiefs are partial owners, or gosh, don't hurt me if I'm misquoting this, but they have some sort of
Yeah.
stake in it. I know because she was a college soccer player. Um, and they hosted women's rugby there. And I
Mm,
think Kansas City, with their help, is trying to get a women's basketball team there as well, I believe. Or there was rumors maybe that might be the next
yeah.
thing there. So
That's
they're
awesome.
trying
Well,
to
and that's
pioneer
another
it.
part of the, yeah, that's another part of the equation too, is like the investment in the arenas. And this is like sort of multifaceted because at the like local level, like the city's got to be invested in it as well, right? And so there's like a lot of commentary on investments being made in men's sports that haven't always been successful at that local level, building arenas and stadiums. And like the team came, they played for 10 years and then they left. So we've got to just remember, we believe in this. We have like a passion towards it. We've got enough evidence that we know people are going to show up. And just like anything, we've got to invest the time and energy and the marketing and the all of the pieces to make it successful. But I think there's huge momentum right now, and to say that there's a space for 50% of our population to see themselves represented is like in my mind like a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure. I know earlier you said your definition of thriving is how you lead an organization. What are the things that you do to help lead yourself so that you're able to make this big impact on others?
Yeah. It's a great question because I think probably the hardest on myself. And I'm a big proponent of sort of the like 80-20 of, we're not going to be perfect. And sometimes we don't do it exactly the way that we would like to every single day, but you keep showing up. I think foundational for me is rest. And my definition of that is like going to bed and getting my sleep. I know that I function so much better when I get my 8 hours. That just like that's me. That's my operating system. So I need to do it to be at my best. I think a lot about how much time, I'm going to give some of the like less obvious answers because, yeah, what am I eating? How am I moving my body? Trying to focus on things like that. But like, how much time do I spend on social media? I really think about that for myself and like how negative that space can get. And it doesn't serve me to always be in there and like focused on that. And so the opposite of that for me, I did a lot of this over the holidays is like, how do I create community? So that's beyond the basics is something that's so important to me. To even the conversation that we're having right now, like I love to like hear people's ideas and hear their different perspectives. And so if I can find that, that's my church, that's my like space to like I can't do it alone. And if I can find that time and capacity to share it with others, like that just brings me so much joy. So I got to remember that that's part of my equation to make sure that I'm like thriving.
Yes, I like that. I like that you called it your operating system. I know we use that within our coaching
Yeah.
circle that we're a part of. Um, but it does, it makes so much sense. It's easy to conceptualize like an operating system, like on Apple. Like you like they get an
Hmm.
update, like they push out an update and like that's the operating system update. Like that's how the phone literally functions. Because if you don't update it, it no longer works. So you have like
Yep.
whatever your operating system is, you have to keep that in place. So I like that
Yep.
sleep is a non-negotiable because when I teach
Hmm.
that in my coaching programs, like sleep is the bottom of the pyramid. Like it's the base
Yep.
of the pyramid. So you have to have your sleep.
Yep.
Social media is a great point too. It drives me nuts as an entrepreneur who is in charge of my own marketing and social media content that the negative posts are the ones that get tons and tons of comments
Hmm.
because people will love to bitch about anything.
Yep.
It's like the stuff you see on TikTok of like, what's the most unhinged blank? Like fill in the
Yep.
blank, and everyone's like, oh, let me vent. And I like try to be like, let's share something positive for other people. It's like crickets. I'm like,
Hmm.
gosh, like I'm trying to build the positive community. Like I need, like the people need to hop in and be the positive with the positive.
It's totally right. Like, why is it such a default to hone in on the negative when what we really need is like positivity, right? Like, that's what's going to make us successful.
Yeah. The community piece is
Yeah.
big too. I like that. I think you referenced that earlier in a different way. I can't remember how you said it, but to me, I compute it as like having your circle of people
Hmm.
that are,
Yeah, right. Like, I think it was talking about allyship and like, who's your
yes.
personal board of directors or, who's in that circle with you, right? Because nothing, you can't do anything alone, right? Like you can't. I just believe it's an impossibility. Like and you know what? The evidence on that is the pandemic. We weren't okay, right? When we couldn't find human connection and be together. So we've got to spend that time to really like connect with one another and find that community. And especially in this like global connectivity through social media where all we see is negativity. Like the algorithm feeds itself, right? So we've got to find what would it be like the analog version of connection that doesn't involve our phones and social media, even though it's like it's necessarily necessary evil for our business. Like that's how we communicate. But like I said, trying to find the time where I'm not always fixated on those individual components and what we're told like success is when it comes to our positioning online.
Yeah, I mean, going back to like the sports example or analogy, I love writing social media posts on like every successful athlete had a coach. Like
Mm-hmm.
they like
Yep.
nobody gets anywhere by themselves. Like you have a team of people, and when people win medals and championships, they always say like I wouldn't even if it's an individual sport, they're like I wouldn't be here without a team of people. Like you don't see all these other people who are behind the scenes doing all these things for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's such an easy way to be like, hey, if you think you can do this by yourself, guess what? The best of the best don't. And no offense, you're probably not the best of the best. So like you need help
Yeah.
too. I say that lovingly, of course, like not
Yeah.
saying they're like basically comparing to like an elite level athlete, which obviously that's like the top 1% of the world.
Yeah.
But
But you're not wrong, right? Like you just think about, I just think I talked earlier, like we all have our gifts. We don't have all the gifts, right? Like we
mhm.
cannot possibly be good at everything. And so to let those people in who have those different gifts, right? Like that's the power of like my definition of diversity is bringing those people together and like getting the benefits out of um all those different people in the room and all the different expertise that they can bring. And it's like such a good point. Like, of course, every we don't get to see them in the spotlight all the time, all the different people that are helping that team succeed or that individual athlete succeed, but they're there.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So we just touched on I've got three credos within this podcast in my book and all the things that I do. And one is defining what it means to thrive. The second one
Hmm.
is we rise by lifting others, but first we must lift ourselves. So that's why I always ask, like,
Yeah.
what do you do to support you? Because that's what I help other women to do is to support themselves so they're not running on empty. The last one is you're one decision away from a totally different life. So I'm curious if you can think of like what one decision or what like pivotal moment in your life like made all the difference for you.
Ooh, that's just so interesting. So I guess I'll share like the pivotal moment of becoming an entrepreneur, and then I'll share maybe what I've been thinking about for like the next part of my evolution. For me, I describe this like huge shift. Like people, it's what people perceive it to be. I went from working in a corporate environment, a steady income, steady job. I'm using air quotes because nothing has permanence. That
Mhm.
could be taken away in a moment's time. But we sort of define it as security. And so I had like 15 years of that, and trying to raise my voice to say like we can do things different, we can do things better. And then, you know, it just wasn't working. I kept sort of like bumping up against challenges that I could not overcome myself. And so I put building blocks in place to then get into the space of entrepreneurship. I just think it gets sort of observed as like, oh my gosh, how did you dive into that? Like, how did you make it happen? But really at the end of the day, it was like thinking about like this is what I want to do and what are the pieces that I need to actually get there. And so believing in myself and believing that I could do it was a huge part of this entrepreneurial journey that I'm now on. And there wasn't a lot of examples around me. I don't come from a family of entrepreneurs. All the folks that I sort of like have within that part of my circle have been in sort of, corporate environments or like institutions where you just stay in your job for 30 years. So I had to really tell myself you have a gift to offer to the world and really move in that direction. So sometimes I really am like, wow, I did that. I really made that happen. So that's pretty cool. But I think now for, this next stage of my entrepreneurship, because I'm moving into like almost 4.5 years of being an entrepreneur, is my own mindset, right? And trying to say, what is bigger than what I'm doing right now? And how can I help more people than I currently do? And getting out of my own way in that. And that comes with its own challenges. Um, but saying it out loud, I got to believe in myself.
Yes. Yes, I love that. I love those big decisions. I mean, obviously for me it's similar too. It's like you're one decision away. Like it sounds like for both of us, and I just a picture of an analogy came to my brain that just like made me so happy. Because I used to say I felt like I kept running into brick wall after brick wall, and you're like,
Yeah.
I built stepping stones to get over the fucking wall. Like, like I love it. Like, yes, forget the brick wall. We're just gonna go over it. We're not trying to go through it anymore, or around it for that matter.
Oh my gosh, that's like the perfect analogy because like how many times do we say like we bang our heads against the wall so many times and we just like are done, we can't do it anymore. But yeah, like it's just like back to basics. It's back to how I think about strategies. Like what are these building blocks that are going to help me get over? One of my favorite movies is Zootopia, and like for many many reasons, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like this little bunny that becomes like a police officer, and she
yeah.
has to go through training, and she's like teeny tiny compared to these other like giant animals who can like clearly just hop over the wall. But she figures it out. She maneuvers her way through the obstacle course and finishes just like everybody else. So, yeah, we all have that possibility in us.
That's fantastic. This has been an awesome conversation. If people want to find you or to reach out to you for your services, why don't you give a brief overview of your product and who you serve, and then how people can find you?
Yeah, no, for sure. So if anyone is inside of an organization really focused on how can we build a high performing, effective workplace and thinking about the culture that your employees and staff are in, and really wanting to hone in on pulling those strengths out of everyone and really creating the environment for them to thrive in. Using your language, Monica, they can reach out to me if you're looking for educational components to really build that foundation of like, how do we have equity in our workplace? How do we ensure that we're like eliminating biases within our systems? That's certainly another piece of work that I do as well. And just really giving people the language that they can have and hold to dive into conversation. So I leave on that, or I leave that one for the last, because I think sometimes it's hard to have difficult conversations, but there's tools that we can use to really start to move towards better outcomes. So if anyone's interested in finding me, my website is www.erindavisco.ca. And then on social, you can find me on Instagram, erindavis.co. And then I'm on LinkedIn as well, and you can find me there. And I try to share as much current and relevant information on this topic there as well.
Yeah. I will link all that information in the show notes. So anybody who wants to reach out for Erin, they can find those links to do so. Erin, thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hang out for a second for me.
Yeah.
Thank you all for tuning in and listening in to another episode of the podcast. If you'd like to get a hold of me or Erin, that information will be down in the show notes. If there's anything else you'd love to hear about, please let me know. Please leave your reviews, like, comment, subscribe, all those good things that helps get this out to more people who need it. So hopefully that this conversation makes its way to somebody who really could use it today. Stay safe out there. I'll see y'all next time.